and welcome back to Brand and Becoming Live with me, Caisha Sheikh. Today we're talking about something every business needs but most get wrong: getting seen, getting trusted, and turning that into sales. My guest today is Lewis Walters, founder of Fluid DM. He helps service businesses turn ad spend into real sales, not just clicks and impressions. Lewis works across paid ads, LinkedIn content, and outreach, and today he's going to break down what is actually working right now. Hi, Lewis. Welcome. Glad that you're here.
How's it going?
Good, thank you. Good. And I know we've talked a fair bit now, and I really wanted to get you on just because you've got so much experience, but also I think different perspectives that we can share as to what's happening, what's not happening, like what's changing as well. So now I did a little bit of an introduction for you there, but are you able just to tell people that maybe don't know what you do and who you help?
Yeah, so we're basically a paid media agency, and we help service-based businesses as well as D2C businesses generate leads and sales that ultimately help sort of grow businesses at the end of the day, because that's kind of the name of the game.
Yeah, nice. And I think, well, it's always changed, isn't it? And I think definitely the past couple of years I've noticed a huge shift and lots of different things happening, people experimenting with different things, but also focus on different areas. And a lot of businesses aren't reporting now on, well, or they're reporting on different things. I know it's something that you and I have discussed, but they're not reporting on just leads and downloads anymore. They're the way that you used to. What would you say that, from your experience, that they're tracking instead now, and why?
Yeah, so I think it's with that pretty important to sort of differentiate the two different business types and sort of what's working for each one. Generally, for the sort of smaller businesses that track sort of B2C leads, it's that they are still reporting on leads and downloads because it's a very short sales cycle, and it might be if they're collecting like an insurance lead or things like that, that they are still reporting on leads. But generally for the B2B and bigger businesses, because the sales cycle is so long, and there's a lot of people in the company, and there's a lot of people that need to go through the decision making process, and maybe there's more time spent on making sure that they're choosing the right solution. Because of that, we're finding that customers are, they're a lot of them are doing their own research, and they don't want to just, click on a form, give their email away, and then sort of be attacked by a salesperson at the end of the day. So, and that also kind of leads into what the platforms are doing, especially LinkedIn. Like, they want you on the platform for as long as possible. So what we're seeing is all the way that people are behaving is they're consuming a lot more content on the platform rather than just giving an email and then leaving the platform, essentially. And so now, because of that, to sort of answer your question, the bigger companies are reporting way more on engagement and content consumed, so that they can track how much of their target accounts are consuming their content at the end of the day. Because they know if they can consume their content, they'll, in the minds of their target customer, their ITP, they can position themselves as the go-to solution.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And I think a lot of buyers now are smarter as well, aren't they? They're not just wanting especially like you say, the B2B space, to download something and not really get much in return. They want to almost feel like it's their decision to watch your content, or their decision to engage with you, and the more that they do that, and the more that you can nurture them in that, I suppose, way, that shows as a clear sign, doesn't it, that there's actually, okay, they're interested, so let's keep doing more of this. So yeah, I totally agree, and I'm seeing very much the same, and it's a reason why a lot around what we are doing, it's like yourself, is around content and profile optimization, because it's people are smart, and they always will research you or look into what you're doing if your content is good, and if you are showing up. Because if you are showing up, it's going to be far more likely than to get seen than the person that isn't sharing any content at all.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for a while now, sort of content has been the name of the game, but I think previously, sort of as you mentioned, it was all like the idea was to gate the content and make sure someone get something in before they're allowed to see the content. Whereas now it's like, if we can make sure people consume as much content about a person in the company or the company itself, then ultimately, hopefully, that company will be chosen when they're in market for whatever the service being offered is.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you say has changed most in the last few years in the way that people use LinkedIn? I know we've just mentioned some of those ways, but is there anything that you're seeing in particular how people are using LinkedIn's changed over the past few years?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shifts that we've seen is a shift from advertising at a company level to advertising on a personal level. LinkedIn brought in thought leader ads about nearly 2 years ago now, which basically allows you to advertise as a personal from a personal brand or a personal profile rather than from the company profile, so that when you're viewing the ads in the feed, it is coming from personal rather than the company. And I think the main reason for that is because of the amount of advertising that people are seeing, on you know any social media platform that you open, or TV everywhere. There's so many ads these days that predominantly come from companies. um, People just get banner blindness, and they're just going to switch off whenever they see, an ad essentially from a company. And they think, they come, they see the profile picture, and I think that his company, they're going to try and sell something to me. I'm not on, LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook to buy. I'm here to, learn something or look at my friend or look at what my friends are doing. So the big shift has been now advertising, as a person and becoming a thought leader in the space, which is, on I think LinkedIn and Instagram, like from the stuff that we're doing, like we're seeing much better results. Again, because I think people want to, at the end of the day, people buy from people, and that's where the trust is. If you can develop as a personal brand, if you can develop trust within your audience, and then when it comes time to sell, like because of that trust that you've built up, people are essentially going to much more likely to buy from you rather than a faceless brand at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree there. And I think it comes back to that thing that you said of people buy from people, and it's always been the case, hasn't it? Whether you go to an in-person event or you go out networking, people like to see real people, don't they? And I think that's what it comes down to. Is almost I say to people, because a lot of people can feel, and we'll talk about it later, but feel a bit awkward with showing up online or showing their face or what people are going to think of me. But I always say when you go to a conference or an event, you're showing up as you. So just do that, but just do it on LinkedIn or do it online, because just be yourself, and you don't need to change who you are, because when you go to those events, people then will see you or they'll recognize you, and it's far easier to have those conversations because often they'll recognize you already or know who you are from being visible. So it's just the same as showing up in person to an event or a conference as to showing up online, just that it's going to be on there, and you'll get more of an audience and hopefully more sales from it, because people can actually see you rather than a faceless brand. And I always say to them as well, your competitors are now doing it. So do you want to lose out to opportunities just because you don't want to show your face or you're scared of being seen? Do you see that a lot with, I suppose, when you're working with people, that it's a bit of a maybe a little bit of friction or a bit of an awkwardness, or I'm not really sure what to do with showing up online as a thought leader?
Yeah, I think it's the whole sort of creating content. There's everywhere you go, people are like, and we're saying it as well, like create content, and we're always telling our clients that we need this content and that content, and it is difficult, I think, to start, and it can feel very unnatural. But I think the only thing you can do is take the first step and put some content out there, whether it is sort of text-based content or video content. I think that if you've got if you are an expert in your domain, whatever that is, essentially just talk about sort of what you're doing and your expertise and how you help people, and try not to over engineer it, think that you need to do something special. But because if you are a true expert in your field, then people will benefit from whatever you have to say about the work that you do.
I totally agree. So I know you kind of mentioned almost just getting started, but have you got any practical advice of where someone should start if they haven't posted content at all? And so that could be across any of the platforms, but have you got any advice if they're really almost hesitating to, where they just haven't posted anything, what should they put out first? Or is there any ideas or things that you would generally give them to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can depend a lot on the person and the industry. video content generally, we always say to, all of our clients, like we can put out image content and or text-based content and people can read it, and it's probably the easier place to start. But again, going back to that, people buy from people, you only really can get that sort of feel for a person either in person or through you get more of it through a video. So trying to put out video content if you can, and like I said, try not to over engineer it, and just be yourself at the end of the day, because it's your personality and your expertise that people are going to buy. So I think not worrying too much about it being perfect, and just talking about your expertise is probably the best place to go. But it is it's very sort of daunting and nerve-wracking. I think like we've been running ads for clients for probably about 6 years, and for the first probably 5 years of that, I'd put out no content myself. I was just telling my clients to do that. So I think now, kind of getting into that, making my own content, it's I can sort of understand where they're coming from a lot more. But yeah, I think the best time to start putting out content is was yesterday, and then the second best time is now. So yeah, definitely. And I also think with all the AI content and avatars and stuff that's coming in like on all the platforms, I think depending on where this AI stuff goes, I think regardless of where it goes, people are going to want real people, and the trust is always going to be in a real person, right? You can create an AI avatar that looks like anybody to say anything at the end of the day, and so I think at some point people are going to get fed up with that, and they're going to go back to sort of just trusting in sort of real people, and the only way they're going to know about you is if you put out content, essentially, and real content using videos and stuff like this, or LinkedIn content, etc. So I think with this flow of AI avatars and stuff, trying to differentiate yourself from that, like, content is the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and like you say, because there is AI now, which is great, and we will both use in different capacities, but I think no one will replace actually being authentic and that human-to-human interaction. And I suppose there's really great advice what you said there, and I've been through that as well. I've almost been a hypocrite of like, yeah, do this, all these strategies, but actually coming around doing it yourself, it's like, oh, actually, I need to practice what I preach. So I do get that, and I think one thing that I always say to people is, instead of internalizing it of like, oh, what are people going to think of me and will I get judged, it's almost just show up and even to help one person or educate one person by a post, then you've done your job with posting content. So almost show up for other people and think, how can I help other people, whether it's in my industry or within my target accounts or within my network? How can I help people, or how can I help one person with my content, rather than, okay, my first content needs to get all these views, all these likes, all these comments, if not, I'm going to take it down. So I think there's always that worry about what if my content doesn't do well, but you'll only do well with being consistent and actually posting more than once and actually having, showing up regularly. So I think, I always just say, just try and help one person by showing up and take that away from what people are going to think of you and is it awkward or are they going to judge you. It's more, how can you help at least one person by showing up, which generally I think helps, and it helped me at the start as well.
Yeah, I think that is kind of quite interesting. One thing that I definitely was maybe a bit sort of blind to, I think, when you're working, for example, working in this industry and, we're running ads for clients and stuff, 24/7, all the time. And because, I'm so in it and, things that might seem very simple and obvious to me because, I'm doing this all the time. And again, this can, translate to, I'm sure, like across different domains, different industries. But I think as soon as I started putting out some content, which I felt was maybe, simple, and I was like, most people would know this. Like, it was interesting sort of putting out my first bits of LinkedIn content and then seeing sort of friends or sort of, acquaintances like in different settings. And they were like, oh, I saw, that LinkedIn post that you put up. Like, I didn't know that this or that, whatever, I talked about on the post, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, like, that was like a light bulb moment to me, that I was like, oh, actually, you know, I'm so far in this like industry that things that I think, you know, everybody knows, like probably, you know, the most of the population don't know. So I think back to your point in terms of when you're putting out content, you know, helping, you know, you might put out a piece of content that you think is, you know, very obvious information, but you'd be surprised at how, you know, helpful it is to your audience. And then at the end of the day, that's what's going to draw them to you and sort of build up your views and your following.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, it's like almost don't assume that people know what you know, and almost if you can help someone who's just one step behind you with something that you know, or 5 steps behind you, because don't assume people know the things that you've learned over the years, or you know, through experience, or kind of knowledge, or you know, courses, or whatever it is that you've done. Just I think show up to educate and help people that are maybe in your industry or your network or your target accounts. But don't assume that they know everything that you know, because I get that a lot, which is like, oh, I thought that's quite a basic post, and most people probably think, well, that's a bit useless, but actually it's like, oh, that's really helpful, thank you. So that's a really good point there. And with content and thought leadership, that's a big part now with, I suppose, having success with across social media, but in LinkedIn and the B2B space. But also I think good outreach and actually networking and being able to communicate with people effectively on LinkedIn is a skill, and a skill to keep honing, because when it first, for example, when I first started on LinkedIn, I could send one type of message that was probably terrible and like really long, and I didn't think about that, you know, not much thought into it, and I'd get quite a few responses, whereas people's buying patterns have changed, people's attention spans have changed, and I think how they want to be communicated with. And again, back to AI, they realise a lot of people are just, you know, talking from AI point of view, so or kind of do messages from AI. So how can people maybe personalize messages or do outreach better, in your opinion? And so what makes a good outreach message now?
I think there was a big trend definitely over the last couple of years of, I think, more so now people using AI. Previously it was agencies that would, you know, do, you know, all of the outreach for you with very minimal research on, you know, who you were actually, you know, targeting and the industry. So it'd be very kind of boilerplate templates as to, you know, we're just going to message everybody in your contact with this like templated message. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, sort of annoyed a lot of people. And you know, I've received, I mean, I'm sure you did as well, like received so many kind of bad outreach messages that are not personalized in the slightest, and you can sort of tell as you're reading the message, like, you know nothing about our company, what we do, or what my sort of pain points are and what I'm searching for. So I think good outreach covers, you know, those 3 things. It's like, you know, what are my pain points, what are the problems that I am struggling with as an agency owner, what you know, what am I going to be searching for, and then also I think, you know, probably less so in our agency because it's small, but also making sure that you're talking to the right level of seniority. You know, we've had this when we do outreach for various companies, making sure that, you know, the person that you're reaching you're either trying to influence, you know, intentionally someone below the decision making tree who's kind of who's probably the problem that you're solving, or you're trying to influence the decision maker or the person that holds, you know, the purse strings at the end of the day, so that, you know, they can actually buy the product. But I don't think you always want to be targeting the person with the purse strings, because sometimes they aren't the person that's experiencing, you know, the problem at the end of the day. So kind of so if you know, having that awareness and then knowing, you know, tailoring your messaging essentially for who you're talking to, which I think is the biggest takeaway with the outreach, is just making sure you're tailoring your messaging and you know who you're speaking to and what they're going to respond to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think knowing who you're talking to, but also I see a lot of people, even when they message me or message clients, they're just writing all the message just about them, like it's just about them and not actually about what the client's experiencing or their pain points or anything to do with them. It's just we do this, and it's like, okay, well, I don't really care. It's like people always want to know what's in it for them, and if you can help them with their pain points or their goals, and that you it puts some effort into actually the message. Doesn't mean it has to be really long, because people again have short attention spans. And another thing that I know we've talked about it before, but you can also go a step further, whether you send maybe a LinkedIn or any social media, but let's say LinkedIn, a voice note as a message, or a video note. But there's different ways that also you can show that you're real, that you've gone the extra mile, and that you are like engaging with them as a human, rather than, oh, this is just a templated message. So if you aren't sure exactly what to say, just say what you're going to say, but maybe send it as a voice note or as a video, and actually that alone can probably set you apart from just a templated message. Would you agree on this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, thinking back to the outreach messages that I received that I actually open, I think there's a bit of a trend now in people using Loom videos. So essentially, they'll send a Loom video, which is a screen record essentially, and they'll go, if it's, for example, if they're trying to sell website design or something, they might open your current website and do a review of your website live and kind of talk you through the changes they'd make, et cetera. And then there's a bit of a pitch at the end of it. But, in doing that, like you say, they're demonstrating that they know like who you are, and they're going the extra mile to kind of research your specific problem. And then also, they're giving value. It's like on that message, they'll go through what they change on your website and why. So even if you don't, purchase or reply to them immediately, you've got some value from that person, and then that's going to like stick in your mind that so and so knows what they're talking about when it comes to web design, even if you're not in if you're not trying to buy straight away, essentially.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the other things that you can look out from their profile is if they've been posting recently. You could always say, if it's a voice note or a Loom, but you could always say, oh, I really liked your post on XYZ. We found this, or I found this, of working with this particular person. How are you finding this? Is exactly like what we do, and give something away, but then also be human with it. So acknowledge that what they're posted about, because most likely if your target client or someone that you're prospecting has posted something, they'll be happy that you engage with it or you notice it, because we all care about our posts and kind of what we're putting out there. So if they have posted something, do kind of acknowledge that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good tip. I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've done any. We've done Loom videos, but we've not done sort of the commenting on sort of a post that they've made. But I think again, that just demonstrates that they're that you're attentive and you're looking at what they're doing.
Yeah,
you're paying some attention.
They'll get a lot. People generally will get a lot less comments on their posts than they would DMs. So if they're being sold to all the time, they're going to get a lot less people engaging with their posts than they are people DMing them trying to sell to them. So just almost acknowledging what they're putting out there if they are trying to post content, because people do care if their content's being seen. So yeah, it's something that I've just seen work well anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
And you personally, and I suppose your company, work with a few different, I suppose, platforms and social media, not just LinkedIn. So I'm conscious of, I suppose, wanting to understand your learnings from different platforms, and how does LinkedIn compare when it comes to actually driving sales, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's, again, sort of what I mentioned at the start, depending on the business size and the sales cycle that your target customer is in. I think if you're looking for, what's the word? If the sales cycle's small, or your target customer is either if it's B2C or it is B2B, but you're probably going to be targeting small companies where you're going to be speaking to the founder, let's say, and the sales cycle is going to be very short. Decisions can be made quickly. I think Meta and Facebook, Instagram are still good platforms for driving leads. They've got, at the end of the day, they've got the biggest user base sort of on the planet. Like their user base is much bigger than LinkedIn and Google. But if you are trying to target sort of like bigger companies, it's going to be account-based targeting, and you're trying to get in front of specific decision makers. I think LinkedIn is definitely the best for that, just in terms of its targeting, because you can be very specific with LinkedIn with your outreach and with your ads. You can literally say, I want to target this job title at this company, and sort of only get in front of those people. Whereas and sort of knowing that the sales cycle is going to be a long time. So you're putting out, as we've mentioned, different pieces of content. You're doing your outreach. So you're influencing the decision makers over time, which I think is what LinkedIn's best for, versus Meta, which is much more quick leads. Somebody's trying to buy in the next couple of weeks, and they're a smaller company and they can make decisions a lot sooner. And then I guess the last major platform there would be Google. Google search particularly is great for people that are in market, and they're probably lower in the funnel because they're on Google, they're searching for a solution to the problem, and so you can get in front of those people while they're actively in that sort of discovery phase where they're searching for a solution to their problem. The only thing with Google is, when you go on Google search, you'll notice there's 5 spots at the top of the page for sponsored results, and then there's 5 at the bottom of the page. And so if you're in a very competitive market, you're bidding against those, the top 5 competition for a click, which, can be, I've seen clicks, go up to sort of 100, 150 pounds, dollars for a single click, because, you're bidding against other massive companies. So I think with Google, again, it depends on how much competition's in your market and the service that you're offering, essentially. But Google is a good platform for catching people as they are, trying to buy.
Yeah, and I think that your point there on LinkedIn with the targeting, it's an important point, because with LinkedIn, I suppose, opposed to other platforms, especially for B2B, you can really target those people, whether it's via ads or via outreach. Generally, you can see who's who, where they're working, if they've changed roles, those types of things. So I think it's really beneficial for that. But then, like you say, maybe the smaller companies or B2C, the other platforms definitely have their place as well. Would you say anything around, or have you noticed anything? Because I get quite a few messages about what's happening with the LinkedIn algorithms, or not getting as many impressions. What would you say your take is across the platforms with impressions and being able to get views on posts and those types of things?
Yeah, I think like all of the platforms, LinkedIn is definitely following, doing the same thing that Facebook and then Instagram did, in terms of, because the paid side is, where they get all their revenue from. And now they're the thought leader ad, so you can essentially boost, your personal posts. The reach from organic posts is definitely, I think, declining. And I think that's probably a sneaky thing that LinkedIn's doing to encourage you to spend much more money on thought leader ads, essentially. But I think that's the same. It's definitely the same with all platforms. Like Facebook did it, originally on Facebook, like 10 years ago, you could put up a company page post, and you get loads of, and it gets shared everywhere, and then they kind of strip that right back. So you get, if you post on a Facebook page now, you get like no engagement whatsoever. And then and then Instagram came out, and Instagram was great for organic posts, because you could put up an Instagram post, and because the platform was new, they were pushing all of the posts, so that the engagement, and people would spend more time on the platform. Then now Instagram ads are probably Meta's biggest sort of driver of revenue. And so if you start a new account on Instagram, to get any traction, it takes a long time. And I think LinkedIn is just following that same trend, unfortunately. But in terms of trying to get views on organic LinkedIn content, I think like the best formats are either video, or their kind of document style ads, where you've got they're like carousels, but they're not. So you can basically view a whole document within your post, and you kind of swipe across. Again, I think thinking about with all of your posts on sort of LinkedIn or any platform, the platforms basically reward posts that keep users on the platform. So whether it's video or documents, or also what we were talking about earlier, like newsletters on LinkedIn now. I know you're doing quite a lot with that.
And I think newsletters have been working really well, just because also, like how you mentioned, LinkedIn wants to keep people on the platform, so you can actually put links within your newsletter, and you can make it longer. You can put bold text, bullet points, whereas normal posts you generally can't. Or you can put links in, but LinkedIn don't really like it, so you get generally less impressions. So newsletters have worked well, just because you can get people to subscribe to it, then they can follow along, but also the formatting's quite nice, so it's easy to read. And like I say, we can put links in there without almost getting penalised as well, which is nice. So I like them for that. But then I like them for that because not everyone also is comfortable yet with video, but they also complement video. So if I've got a client that is good with video, that's great. But then we can also complement it with newsletters. Or if a client doesn't want to do video just yet, or they haven't got around to it, newsletters are really nice because it's a nice way to grow subscribers, but also post content without getting penalised for putting links, or we can't, we can format them a bit nicer than a general post, which I like as well. So, but yeah, the kind of carousels or the documents are really good as well. So, and I think a lot of it comes down to consistency. So, a bit like we mentioned earlier, you can't just expect to post once and not be happy if you haven't got many impressions. It's a build, and almost ignore it. I think I've been guilty of it like years ago. I was like, oh, that didn't do very well. Maybe I should delete that. But that's the worst thing you can do, because it's still content that's going to be on your page. So, your ideal client might find you from your profile or from something you put a piece of content, and then come across that content, and then it's another way for them to see more about you or see what be educated by it. So don't delete it, because it's either a learning lesson or it's a piece of content that's almost a helpful resource on your page. So, and it's all part of building.
I think as well, like not everybody likes, will like your post just from like they'll read it. They won't like it. I mean, I've gotten like a couple of clients before where I've asked them how they came across us, and they were like, oh, I saw like your LinkedIn post on this and it was really good, and I looked back through it and I was like, well, why do you like it?
So that happens so often, doesn't it? And it's like, oh, you even know who I am, because they don't. And that's why you should look at like your impressions, and like, people are seeing it, but some people are also conscious, because you got to think not everyone is comfortable with it. Some people are conscious even to like a post because they don't want to put themselves out there that much. So I think, look at your impressions. But that's a really good point there. And one I forgot to even say, like, people may see it but not actually like it at all. So people are watching even if you don't realise that they are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you can see that when you look at like the impressions of your posts, like the impressions will be, 10, 20, 100 times higher than, the engagement that you actually get on it from a like perspective. But I think just because people aren't liking it doesn't mean they're not like looking at the post and paying attention to, the information that you're giving.
Yeah. And it's just about staying front of mind. So if you've got a competitor who isn't posting anything, but you are, that who is it your ideal client going to remember more? You, even if it's just by skimming past your post or ideally reading it and paying attention. Or if you've got a competitor who is posting and you're not, again, they're going to remember your competitor. So I always try and frame it in that way as well. So I suppose when you've seen a client become more visible on LinkedIn, what changes for them on the sales side? Have you noticed direct impact on it, or what have you noticed change for them, if anything?
Yeah, I guess there's again two sort of benefits from it. One, if they're posting organically and we're running ads for them, generally because of the type of ads that we run, that it is performance marketing, so essentially that we'll be trying to drive them more leads and sales at the end of the day. So that would definitely increase. But I also think that even if we're not running as much on sort of the ad side of things, just being more present on LinkedIn when sales calls and demos are being booked in, the prospect has a lot more context and knows a lot more about sort of the company by the time they turn up to one of the calls. So which makes it a much easier sell essentially. And you also just see, you're also much more credible, if a prospect has been viewing, your content for the last couple of months and they know sort of your views on or sort of how you solve the problem, et cetera, by the time they turn up to the sales call, a lot of the time they're almost already sold, because they're like, oh yeah, well, we know how you deal with this, this, and this, and this is what really impressed us. So, you know,
It's a lot
you
warmer,
go through
isn't it, rather than a
Yeah.
cold meeting or cold
Yeah.
call.
Yeah, definitely. And even with, even if you're doing cold outreach as a company, I mean, it kind of changes that cold or super cold outreach to, you know, there is then, you know, the chance that they can go on your LinkedIn and, for example, if you're sending like cold email, rather than, you know, them reading your email and going, okay, I sort of, you know, like what you're saying here, going on your LinkedIn and they can't find anything about what you do or who you are, versus if they go to your profile, you've got a great profile, you've got posts that talk about solving the problem that, you know, they have, then they're far more likely to respond to a, you know, piece of cold outreach or cold email.
Yeah, I totally agree there. And it's something that I see a lot with clients, people that aren't posting content or haven't got their profile updated or optimized, they get a lot less traction to outreach or connection requests than someone who has optimized their profile and is posting at least once a week. Because again, someone most likely will click on your profile if you send them a message, and if there's nothing on there, then they'll just click off it. So it's like having something on there to get them to stay, but also show that you're human, show that you care about what you do, show that you have got something to say of like that may actually be helpful, or even just that you made the effort to be posting content. That goes a long way as well. So I've definitely noticed the direct kind of difference between those who don't post content and are doing cold outreach versus those who are, because like you say, it warms them up already, because oh, actually this person looks quite valuable, or they look like they're posting some interesting things within the sector, so I'll connect with them, rather than this person hasn't bothered, I don't even know if they're real or not, so I won't bother accepting or getting back to them.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like if you've got an empty profile, I've done this before where I've received, you know, cold outreach, and I may have, you know, looked at it and gone, okay, that sounds good, let me check this person out, and then I've looked on LinkedIn and I'm like, I don't know if this is a real person or not, and then that's kind of completely put me off.
Yeah, that's it. So it does go a long way, even if you, like you say, it's the other way around, you're doing cold outreach for people to see it, or even like you say, if they see your content, great, and then it's a nice nurturing process before they do get on that meeting, and then it almost like removes the barriers, doesn't it, when you get onto that first initial call or meeting, because they already have a feel for you already, which is nice, and they've chosen to be there.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
And what would you say, or what's one thing that you see business owners get completely wrong on LinkedIn? Is there anything that maybe stands out to you as something that they get wrong, in your opinion?
I think what they get wrong, I think, you know, we mentioned, you know, from the outreach perspective, if they're doing outreach and it's not personalized at all, and I think that kind of almost relates to everything that you know you can do on LinkedIn. I think before, you know, you create your content, just having a clear idea of who the content's for. You know, like there's that sort of the phrase, like, you know, if you're selling to everybody, then you're selling to no one, essentially. So
Yeah,
it's like making sure that, you know, if you're making content, if you're doing outreach, just having a clear idea of who your customer is, and just trying to make sure you're speaking their language, rather than, you know, just saying, you know, just trying to sell, talking about yourself and just trying to sell to everybody. And I think the other thing is, on top of that, on the content side of things, not just basically saying buy my stuff. With it, trying to give some value and just positioning yourself as, yeah, as we talked about, a thought leader or an expert in the area. I think if you talk enough about what you're, you know, the problems you solve, how you solve them for your ICP, like what you're good at, like the clients then will come because they view you as an expert, rather than you just saying, you know, please buy my stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that whole thought leader piece is really important, because it's almost that perception as well, isn't it, of like what people think of you. And if you are just doing sales posts all the time, again, they won't even get seen by anyone. But two, you aren't going to be doing anything of value and actually educating anyone and showing that you're an expert at what you do. So, and you'll get more sales by not just doing buy my stuff posts. So you can have like call to actions in the post, but give some value and actually maybe educate and help people first, and then the sales will come. And it's about, yeah, I see those types of posts. Well, actually, I don't see as many now, but maybe it's because I'm not being shown them, because they don't do very well at all, do they?
Yeah, no, LinkedIn suppressed all of the reach on the buy my stuff posts.
But I have seen it before, and I'm like, people don't even know who you are or what you do, or if you're valuable, or if you can help them, because you've just basically just put like sales posts. So definitely, like you said, add value, help people with their pain points, help people achieve like their goals, and think about, solve a hyper specific problem is what I would always say, and then those sales will come from that. So my last question for you: if you had to give one piece of advice.
Oh, I lost you there. Back.
Oh, I've got you back. Did you hear my question? Did you hear the last question?
I got half of it. One piece of advice.
Yeah, one piece of advice to someone, whether it's a leader, salesperson, or an SME who wants to win new clients, what would it be?
One piece of advice. I think, yeah, sort of the theme of all of this is create good educational content. I think, essentially it is just talk about what you're good at and how you help your ICP. And I think do that from the most authentic place as possible. Be yourself when you're doing it, because I think everybody will resonate with different people, and making sure you have a personality that people can resonate with is half the battle with all of this.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm showing up and post content, and be educational posts go really well, but also be authentic and be yourself, because if you do try and be someone else about it, or show up with a different personality, you'll feel incredibly uncomfortable, and it won't last anyway, and you won't attract your tribe of people that want to talk to you or kind of follow you. So yeah, if you're naturally louder, or if you're more of an introvert, or if you're a bit in between or quirky or whatever you are, just be how you are in real life, but online goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But thanks, Sus. This has been really helpful, and thanks for being so kind and open with all your knowledge and experience. And if people want to connect with you, then what is the best way for them to connect with you?
The best way would be on LinkedIn, actually. Yeah, if you type in Lewis Walters, I'll probably be there on LinkedIn. You'll see my content, and yeah, if anyone wants to send me a message or has any questions about what we've talked about today, then yeah, feel free to drop me a message.
Perfect, thank you, and I'll tag you in the post as well, so people can find you easier as well. But thank you everyone for listening. I know a lot of you listen on the replay and the recording, so thank you again. And if you do have any questions, then do drop me a message as well. And if not, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.